I mean, let me throw a question out to you real quick. Just real quick, we can get back to this. But when you hear the term fan service,
yes,
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You know what? It depends. I know it's funny because if people don't know, fan service in the anime community is when there is how do I explain it? There's an over sensationalism of body parts, whether it be male or female characters, to appease fans. Now we've spoken about this on the show that as a 14-year-old boy, shonen is basically for like preteen or teenage boys, right? Primarily, not to say that only boys can watch shonen, everyone can watch it, but that's kind of the target audience. So me and my co-host, we also used to joke like teenage boys, we're just like, oh my gosh, like, oh wow, fan service. So they're drawn to it. Now, I personally think the old school fan service, like the ones in Dragon Ball Z, so on and so forth, where it provides comic relief is fine. And probably overcomplicating this answer, but where there's some sort of comic relief is fine. Whereas what I don't like is an unneeded kind of like so she falls down and you see her panties, or she leans over and there's just big breasts, and like sometimes there's no need for it. I just think they just put it in there. Now it's not for me to say they should take it out. It's not my culture. It's not me drawing it. So on and so forth. Everyone has their own opinion, but I think in some instances it goes over the top. And I don't know if you've ever seen Seven Deadly Sins. There's a scene where Meliodas is just fondling, I forgot her name now, but she's just fondling her breast. I don't know why. There's no need for it, right? Whereas when it comes to like Naruto, where Jiraiya Sensei is trying to get a peek and he never gets it, it's almost like a cat and mouse. So there's a bit of comic relief there. That for me is kind of like funny, but then the other ones are just like no. So sorry, I know I'm kind of overcomplicated answer when you say what comes to mind. And I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but I also don't want to say it's a good thing. It just depends on how it's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so there. Yeah, I mean, I from that perspective, I think that creatively, and even when it comes to lore, in this case of like adapting a comic, a lot of times we, I'd say half the time we're kind of like servicing the comic through gritted teeth, and the other half we're like very, very thankful that it's there because it does a lot of the work for you. So I think even if you're adapting a comic, at the end of the day, we are still like our own creative vessel in a way.
Yeah.
You can't, you have to leave some room for you. So obviously it's a matter of homage or respect that you're trying to adapt things as closely as possible. But even something like Invincible, as far as the first 2 seasons go, just what you've seen, characters have been swapped out or gender bent. Issues have been and storylines have been told out of order, in order to kind of like craft this adaptation. And so, I feel like instead of saying one is more important than the other, balance is key.
Where do you see the future of animation in the West? We saw Arcane spend over 200 million on their 9-episode show, worth every penny worth every buck in my opinion. What a show that was! Do you think this will become the norm, or can great storytelling overcome poor, lackluster production?
Whoa! Wow, it's a great question. So many ways to answer that question. Well, I mean, I think that this is like, put your tinfoil hat on for my conspiracies here. But I think the major studio system has kind of been, for its own reasons, has been kind of flawed for a long time, just in terms of how they produce things, how expensive things are. And my assumption was that like, I don't know, 10 to even like 5 years from now, smaller boutique studios and people breaking out and doing their own thing will become the norm, and that makes way for like AI as well. Like it's a sad and kind of scary reality in a way, but because they mentioned production and they mentioned numbers, I wouldn't normally answer it this kind of like granular, but animation, I don't know how, but I predict that animation is going to become significantly cheaper in the next decade, which will mean that we will have to, as artists, we'll have to figure out how to navigate that, and or take control of it ourselves. And these boutique studios are, I forget what Wes said, but like, him with Lion Animation and or even in France, so with like Studio La Cachette, or I feel like
Fortiche as well.
Fortiche, I feel like we're gonna see a rise in that. But yeah, because I mean they're asking from a production standpoint, not from like a storytelling standpoint, right?
So the last bit of it was, do you think this will become a norm, or can great story overcome poor lackluster production? So let's just take Arcane. Great story, great production, like top tier, amazing. However, from my perspective anyway, I think you can have a budget, even to a point where you can have stickmen on the, like, I don't know if you saw those old YouTube videos where it's like a stickman fighting. But the story was there, so people still kind of like loved it and you like navigated to it. So I think production to an element is like the icing on the cake, but the story is the foundation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's where, just from a production standpoint, that's where we kind of have like a chicken egg situation, because just because you have the right story in terms of getting it made, like that requires money. But then on the flip side, you have a lot of money. That doesn't always mean you can tell a good story. So
good story. Yeah.
I think, I mean, trends aside, it's like, and I think that's why we all still have our jobs, and that's why it's so hard. Like, kind of like writing a good story, it's like lightning in a bottle. Nobody knows how to do that over and over again. The short answer is, like, stories always matter more. People are going to come back because of the story. Maybe people will be entertained because of the animation, but people are going to stick around for the story.
I agree. I'm watching Mob Psycho at the moment. I was and Ranking of Kings. I don't know if you like Ranking the Kings. My co-host kept saying, you got to watch this, you got to watch this. I'm like, it looks like a little children's fairy tale, the like line drawing. It just looks, I'm not watching this. He said, watch this show. Okay, I watched it, and oh my, one of the best shows I've ever watched. It's in my top 10 anime of all time. Like,
wow.
And the only reason why it's not high is because it's only had one season. I want to see how it kind of like, but you have, like, they flip everything anime, the classic shonen trope, they flipped that. They made it with like this. It's just incredible. And the art style wasn't something I was like familiar with. So similar to Kengan Ashura as well. That not necessarily that had a great story, but again, enough, because I love martial arts. I was a martial artist. Enough for me to like still be watching it. So I think you're absolutely right. Like shows like Mob Psycho, Ranking the Kings, the production may not necessarily be there, and I'm just speaking as an amateur, it probably is there, but it may not be there from what we see, but the story is more than makes up for it. For sure.
Yeah.
Last question here is, what is your general preference, 2D or 3D? Do you have one?
Not anymore. No. Okay. I think that before going into series and working on 2D shows, my preference was like feature, because I just felt like 2D was really limiting. But I think regardless of the medium, like limitations are actually kind of like your best friend in a way. It's kind of like with cooking, where they say that, you can make all the fanciest things, but it's really how you like cooking eggs is like really hard, for instance. Cooking eggs like really, really well, for instance. And so I feel like that's something that I've kind of grown into in my career at this point, is like restraint and limitation. That was the challenge of, for me to be hopping back to like Spider-Verse from Invincible, was like, I went from from a snare drum to like a 50-piece kit. Like, how do I maintain musicality with all of these bells and whistles. So yeah, I think that I don't have a preference because it's all about like simplicity and limitation at the end of the day.
Oh, I know this. Click on the next video before he lets it off. Impeccable form, by the way, and the Hunter x Hunter drip is... Get out of there! It's still there, though. Yes, but in his mind, it's gone.